And she goes first to the disciples, and the disciples really want her to leave them alone. They're kind of bothered by her. They want her to kind of move on. Well, after she goes through, her conversations with the disciples, it almost seems that Christ doesn't want to deal with her either. And so here is a woman who seems to have an issue. Her daughter is sick, and she's not getting, at this particular point, as we call it in our world, she's not getting good customer service. Well, I can remember a time in my life, and if you're old enough, maybe some of you remember some times in your life where things were a little bit strained and a little bit stressed. I remember a time when I used to say that my car was running on fumes. Maybe some of our young people, and then maybe some of our older people might be going through some of the same things today. Maybe you arrived to church today on fumes. And what that meant is that you didn't have much gas, and you kind of wondered, could you really make it? The Lord has blessed me. I don't really have those issues anymore. Kelly and I don't have children at home, and so therefore I have a full tank of gas. But when you got kids at home, and when you got different obligations, and when you make a little less money and you try to figure things out, you don't always have a full tank of gas. Sometimes you got a little bit to get you through. There are also times where you realize that there is no second portion. You have to eat the first portion, and as they say, go to bed on it. There are times when you got to drink water. If Shantae's brothers were here this morning, they would say he gave us bread before we ate it. The bread filled them up. That's right. You had to have 2 slices of bread before you had dinner. Make sure that you're full. And then you had to make sure that you had 2 glasses of water to every can of pop. And so, there are those times in life where you realize that you don't have as much as you want. You want just a little bit more. I've often told some of the other fellows that have lived in the parsonage, I've kind of changed the way I do things, Brother Renard, because I don't give them bread so much anymore, but I keep some flaxseed up in the cabinet. And every now and then you got to sprinkle some flaxseed over in the salad. You might have to put some on the sandwich, because that flaxseed, it gets in there and swells up, and it makes them think they're full. All of us have come at a point in time where it seems that we don't have all that we want. Sometimes it's not just physical things. Sometimes it is also the things that we have to imagine that they're better even when they're not. There are times when life has brought you a little less, and you got to kind of dream that it's bigger, even though it's not. We find a woman who comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, I didn't come for you. Jesus says, I've been sent for the Jews, not for you. This woman and this particular conversation that she has with Jesus is an interesting one, because she says, Brother Rick Moore, he says, I didn't come for you. And the woman said, but even the dogs take the crumbs from the master's table. So this morning, for just a few moments, let's think about how to appreciate crumbs. Because, Brother Danny, I don't know about you, but I can tell you that I oftentimes complain when I don't have enough. I'm a complainer about simple things, because I don't like to run out. I don't like when the soap gets down too small. Anybody like that here this morning? I don't like when the soap gets down too small. I don't like when the crumbs come out of the cornflake bag and you got all of the sugar at the bottom. I don't like that. I don't like to run out. I don't like when somebody drinks up the lemonade and leaves what you call a swallow and not a glass full. All of us have those moments where we get to a place where we say, I don't have enough and I'm not happy about it. It could be the fact that sometimes in your marriage you don't have all that you want. Kelly and I was talking about this the other day. Some people are looking for 50-50 and they don't realize you ain't going to get no more than 80-20. Sometimes you're not going to get all that you want. Sometimes you're not going to get all the performance out of your car that you want. Sometimes you're not going to get everything that you want. And there are times where we've got to learn how to deal with the crumbs. And so how do we appreciate the crumbs? Look at verse 22. Verse 22 says this. It says, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him. You need to remember your tears. Yeah, you need to remember your tears. See, sometimes the problem that we have is we forget what we asked for. We forget the struggle to get to the place where we could have some crumbs. We forget all of that, and because we forget that, we lack appreciation for where God has us now. Yes. Oh, I wish I could get you. See, some of us remember when you lived on Section 8. Yes. See, you had your Section 8 certificate. You remember when they came into your apartment and they had to inspect it. Yes. You remember that you had to call some family members over to help you clean up so that it was clean enough so that you could stay in the place where they had you. You remember a landlord that wouldn't fix something that you know you needed that was essential. Yes. Got kids wrapped up in rugs and carpets and everything else trying to stay warm. But then as soon as God gives you your own little place on a street that you don't like, you got the nerve to complain. You forgot that you used to cry for more, and now that you have more, you're treated like it's less.
Preach that word. That's good.
Sometimes when God places us somewhere, gives us more, we're still complaining.
Right.
Like, what about this? I still don't have enough. You need to think about the days when you were crying. You need to think about the pain and the sadness that came about because you didn't have enough, and now that you got a little bit more, you need to thank God for what you got. Amen. You used to work for $5.50, then you got $8.50, now you got $9.50, now you got $16.50. You ought to be glad. Yeah. So sometimes we've got to thank God and remember that you cried to be here. Somebody said, oh, well, you know, marriage ain't so good. I remember when you was praying for that man. Now that you got him, it ain't so good. Remember all them crying nights and all them tears you said to God, I'm lonely, I want somebody. There you got somebody, there you go. You pray for them crumbs, thank God for them. So we got to remember our tears in order to remember the past, in order to appreciate where God has brought us to. But then look at verse 22. When she comes crying, but she not only comes crying, she comes and she says, have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David, my daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. We need to remember family. We need to remember family. See, sometimes what we do is we get so into ourselves that we forget that there is struggle that is required, Brother D, in order to take care of our family. See, you can't always get your hair and nails did when you know your kids got to have some school clothes.
Come on, sir.
See, sometimes you got to get there and remember that the reason you got crumbs is because you got one extra mouth to feed. And you can't be selfish and take care of number one. Times come in our lives where we got to remember that it is the family that we're struggling for. Sometimes we must realize that it is about somebody else and not about ourselves. She gets there and she's crying, and she's not crying for herself. She's crying and she's pleading to God for her child. And so we've got to remember that this thing is not just about us. It is not just about me, but it is also about our family, that our family can do well, and that our family, Sister Jackie, can do better. Sometimes you gotta rely on some crumbs in order to take care of the family. Don't mean that it's just little babies. Right. Because sometimes the big babies need as much help as the little babies. Sometimes you might be the baby, but got to take care of the mama, got to take care of the siblings. You got to take care of somebody. And so when we get to God, it's not all about me, but it's also about the family. It's about keeping it together, about holding it together. It's about making sure that we can all survive. Look at verse 23. Verse 23. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. You also got to remember what they said. They told him, saying, sit on with herself. Get out of here. Don't you know that it's somebody that's been trying to keep you from everything? It's somebody that don't want you to have a crumb off the table, Sister Shannon. It's somebody that don't want you to have all or in part. There's somebody that's trying to block you and your blessings. It's somebody trying to keep you from your money. Somebody else trying to keep you from your honey. It's somebody trying to keep you from everything that you think you want or that God has for you. There is always a hater. There's always somebody trying to send you away. There's always somebody that wants to steal from you, take from you, kill you, destroy you, divide you. There's always one who's running to and fro on the earth and under the earth and everywhere else looking for you to divide you from your blessing. And sometimes we don't appreciate the fact that we've made it through the obstacle of somebody who doesn't want us to have anything. Don't you remember? I know all of us have had that time where somebody tried to divide us from our money at work, divide us from our joy in our house. Always somebody in the way. And now that you done made it halfway to the other side of that person who has been trying to hate on you, you're going to back up now and not be appreciative for what God has given you? Always somebody who says send her away. Because which one of us is worthy to really have an audience with the Lord? Which one of us is worthy of walking in and being able to speak to God? And don't you know that every time you get up, the devil is saying they're not worthy to speak, send them away. So you ought to be happy that you got through the door. You ought to be happy that you're there. You ought to be happy that somebody's listening to you. And we ought to be appreciative for the crumbs. But then, look there in 24. He says, but he answered and said, I am not sent unto the lost sheep of Israel, or the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's who he sent for. He sent for the Jews, not the lost sheep, not these folks. He said, I'm not sent for you. What you need to do is reject entitlement. Yes, Lord. He said, I come for you. See, some of us think just because we hear, we entitled. Just because you're here, you're not entitled to no blessings. Well, I pay my tithes. God ought to bless me. No. I show up to church. God ought to know. I pray. God, no. I read, but no. You are not entitled. You were not born worthy. All of us were born unworthy. Yes. None of us were born so wonderful that the Lord gave us wings on our back when we were born. None of us in here can jump off this building today and fly. Dr. Cornell West said it this way. He said, all of us have been born between urine and feces. Think about that. Came in the world just as nasty. And then the Bible said that we are born in just a few days full of trouble. You came in the world nasty, and a few days later you were nastier than you were when you got here. Some of us are still nastier than we were yesterday. The fact is, we're not entitled to anything. What we're entitled to is death. Every single one of us deserved to die, but Jesus stood on the cross for us. Every single one of us, while we were yet sinners, he loved us. Every single one of us deserved to die. Our sin deserved us death. But grace and mercy is what allowed us to live. Otherwise, we're not entitled to anything. Songwriter said that all of my righteousness is but a filthy rag. And so we must reject entitlement. I know that's hard in this culture because we've taught our children that you're entitled to something when you're really not entitled to anything. You want somebody to give you something? You're in the wrong line by living in America. And the longer you live in this country, the more you're going to find out you're in the wrong line. I think we find out more and more that the line is changing. Oh, yeah. And so therefore you're not entitled to anything. You're going to have to learn how to work for everything you get, and you have to work hard for it. But who said that life would be fair? Right. Nobody told you life was going to be fair. And so you're not entitled to look at 25. Look at what she does. Then she came and worshiped him, saying, Lord, help me. You got to learn to worship anyway. You got to learn to worship anyway. Look at your list. I know you wrote them down because that's how smart you are. The fact is, Brother Montreal Kirby, you got to worship him even when you're crying. You got to worship him even when you got some family issues. See, you got to worship him even when other folks are talking about you, when they're trying to push you back. You've got to worship him whether you're entitled or not. You've got to worship him in season and out of season. She decided that, you know what, you can put me out, but I'm still going to worship you. If we had that kind of mindset about God, could you imagine how God would feel about us? I'm going to worship you even though you rejected me. I'm going to worship you even when it seems like you're not blessing me. I'm going to worship you even when it seems that I'm crying. I'm going to worship you through my pain and through my struggle. I'll worship you when you take from me. I'll worship you when you don't like me. I'll worship you when you cuss me out. When they do all of those things, I'll still worship God in spite of everything else. So she took from that, I'm going to worship God. See, some of us, if God isn't doing what we want him to do right now in our favor, we take from that, better not go with God today. Better do it my way. Better figure out how to do it some other way because God isn't doing it like I want him to do it. But this woman, she took from him saying, you know what, I didn't come here to take care of you. His buddies had already said, get rid of her. And what she took from that is, I'm going to worship. I wish we could get that mindset. I wish I had that mindset. That no matter what, I'm going to worship. I wish, Brother Sanders, that I could get out of my negative mode at times and be positive enough to worship God anyway. Wouldn't that be amazing what the church would look like and what our lives and what our houses would look like if we said, I'll worship him anyway? I'll worship him when it seems like the chips are down. I'll worship him when it seems like I don't have anything. I'll worship him when it seems like it's not going my way. I'll worship him through my pain. I'll worship him through my struggle. I'll worship him through my poverty. I'll worship him. No matter what. That's what we got to learn to do. We got to learn to worship him no matter what. But then look what her worship does. Look at verse 28. And you'll see what she does. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, no, I'm sorry. Let's go back. 25. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. Then 26. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to the dogs. 27. And she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. See, you got to respect. This is number 6. You've got to respect the master's crumbs.
That's good.
You got to respect the master's crumbs. See, these aren't just anybody's crumbs.
Right.
Sister Jasmine, these are good crumbs. My grandmother told me years ago, she worked for a rabbi in Charleston, West Virginia. And she said, Sister Wesley, that when they would finish with dinner or when they would finish cooking, that the food had to be separated in the trash. That you could not just throw the food in with the rest of the garbage. That they believed, the rabbi believed, that somebody who needed food could be going through the trash can, and it would be wrong to put the food in the garbage with the other garbage items. So she said that they had to actually take the food scraps and put them separately and tie them in a separate bag so that it would not get contaminated by the other stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you that my great-grandparents, there's a history of working for folks in my family. And so my great-grandfather, he worked for some folks too. And the folks that he worked for, they were very specific about their stuff because they also were Jews. And so most of the time, Sister Mac he would bring home a lot of the stuff from the folks. You know the interesting stuff, Brother Turner, about the folk stuff is that they stuff that came off the table looked better than our stuff on the table. Oh, I wish somebody had catch that. See, the stuff that he would bring home, well, that was the first time I saw a steak, they called it filet mignon. You know, you look at it and say, that's a figlet magla. But I tell you what, when you cook that thing right, it's better than the stuff we had. It's better than ground chuck. See? Yeah, it's better than a skirt steak. It's better than a roast bottom. The stuff they were throwing away was better than the stuff we had on the table. Don't you know that the very crumbs that come from the master's table is better than that stuff that you tried to hold on to? Don't you know that the worst Christian man in this church is better than that mess you getting from the nightclub that's down on the down low? Don't you know that when God gives you something that no matter what it looks like, it's still better than everything else you got? Yes, sir. Just a crumb from the master's table is better than the whole cupboard full of stuff that you got. Yes. That woman had sense enough to know because she watched some stuff. She realized, Brother David, that a dog is tough. You know, dogs are tough. And we're not talking about these little domestic puppies that we got. When we talking about them old school dogs. And she said that the dogs are surviving off the crumbs. Oh, I wish you could catch this. She noticed, she looked, she watched, and she noticed that the dogs were surviving off the table. In other words, sometimes you got to have sense enough to watch everybody else in the coal mine. Let me take you somewhere. Come on. Nikki Giovanni wrote a book called The Canary in the Coal Mine. Some years ago, I had the privilege, I guess you could call it, or the experience of going down in the coal mine. I was 1,600 feet under the earth. And while under there, one of the things that they showed us is they showed us that the coal miners always kept a canary in the coal mine, a bird in the coal mine, because his lung structure is kind of like ours, but very weak. So therefore, if they hit the wrong vein and gas begins to come out into the mine, the canary would drop dead. And when they would watch the canary drop dead, then they would realize that it's time for us to go. The canary was the sign that it's time to go. As long as the canary was up tweeting and singing and what, then they realized that everything, Sister Nene, is all right. But if the canary dies, then it's not all right. Let me tell you that this woman looked and she noticed that the dogs were eating the crumbs, but the dogs were alive. See, church, look around this building today. Look at the one who's sitting beside you, the one who's looking around you, and guess what? All of us have had some issues, but we're still surviving. You ought to realize that even the crumbs are keeping us alive. We may not be as happy as we want to be. We may not have all that we want to have, but I tell you, when I look at you, and when I look at you, and look at you, and you still smiling and surviving, it lets me go another day. I got another day because I watched them. They doing all right, so that means if God will bless them, surely he'll bless me. If God can bless this bald-headed man, this bald-headed man, this bald-headed man, that bald-headed man, then I can look around and say, you know what? There's hope for me. God blesses us. And we need to realize that you're still standing, that the crumbs have caused us to make it. I watch the news and sometimes you get a little bit bothered because I tell you this news is getting worse and worse. Every time you turn it on, there's something a little bit more crazy than the last time you turned it on. But let me tell you, we done survived some stuff. You know that song that says, I'm a survivor? Let me tell you, brother D, this stuff is going on. This ain't nothing compared to what we done already survived. See, in order for us folk to be in here with this color in our skin, that means that somebody must have survived a bad boat ride. It was not a Carnival cruise. Somebody survived a real bad boat ride. And that means that somebody survived some whippings, and somebody survived being hungry, and somebody survived being able to come from the south to the north on that journey, watching the stars and whatnot. Somebody had some beatings, and somebody was raped, and somebody was maimed. It's a whole lot of stuff that's going on. Yeah. But guess what? We're still here. You tell me that after they freed them slaves, then they made them sharecroppers. They were still in the field, picking cotton day and night, but we still here. They might have gave us, as I said the other week, they might have gave us the chillings and the fat back, but we still here. We know how to take a green and boil it, and put some fat back in there and make it dinner. We still here. Give us flour, we'll add water and make biscuits. We are still here. We already been through some stuff, and as soon as they said, let us out the cotton field, then they said, don't drink out of my water fountain, but we still here. It doesn't make any difference how long. What you do to us, we like the roaches will be here after the bomb. Kim Jong-un can get all upset and start fighting with them folk over in Washington, but just tell him we'll still be here. We'll be waiting on you when you get here. We've survived. All this stuff, this ain't nothing new. We survived segregated schools. We survived it. We still survived being underpaid. We survived it.
Yes, we did.
Carter G. Woodson said undereducated. We survived it. We've survived tenement housing. We survived it. We've survived the projects. We've survived their bullets and our own. And we're still here.
Yes, Lord. Thank you.
So let me tell you that it don't take much to keep us alive. And I tell you, we'll conserve energy. We'll rest for a while on the crumbs. We'll eat a chicken until we get a pork chop. We'll grind up some beef till we get a steak. We will survive. So don't think that all of this stuff that's on TV, there was a time when whites and blacks couldn't come together. There was a time where in Virginia, loving versus loving, white folks and black folks couldn't marry. There was a time since I've been pastoring the church. I pastored in Southern Ohio, and I had some white folks to come, and the other white folks told them, don't go to that church. That's a black church. Don't you know that? Now look at this church today. It's all kind of people come to this church. White deacons, white musicians, Asians have been playing piano here. All kinds of people. And you know what? They must want to stay. Brian is off today, but he's been here, what, 4 years almost? Alex seems like he don't want to go nowhere. About the first 3 weeks, I drove that man crazy. I had to send him to the door every other week. He's still here. Now we worship.